This week on New to You, Woe Yuletide Them Pt3, The Nutcracker in 3D. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
Keith Allen Vincent I and
Julian Cage, and special guest
Dan McCoy.
All right, Dan, thanks again for being a guest host with us.
yeah,
Thank
3
you
weeks
for
running. It's
Having
I
me.
mean, last week was kind of a slog, so we're glad you were able to you decided to take the train ride out here tonight.
Mm-hmm. Well, it gets harder and harder every time, but I'm pushing.
Yeah,
through
but I
it.
blame the MTA for that.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a recommendation review podcast where we bring stuff to you that you definitely should watch.
or
that you
or
should-
maybe shouldn't.
No, this is something that if you haven't seen it yet, then we're glad that we're here to remind you to go watch it.
And sometimes you can listen to what we say about it and kind of deduce whether or not you should really watch it.
Emphasis on deuce. Last week, we had The Ventures. The week prior, we had a little TV special with Mr. T and Emmanuel Lewis called The Christmas Dream. And this week, we're going to have Jules's pick.
This week we have an epic.
All right, let's roll with it.
See that city? It's my city before the Rat King took it from me.
His kingdom was overthrown. A curse was cast upon him, and he was banished from his world forever.
The epic Nutcracker in 3D. So it was a 2010 movie that was, in case you didn't get it from the title, filmed in 3D, projected in 3D. For the few who were lucky enough to see it in the theaters, I was not one of them. It's a British-Hungarian co-production that's loosely adapted on the ballet, The Nutcracker, and features the music from that as well. And it was directed by Andrei Konchalovsky, a Russian writer-director, and I guess this was kind of his opus. It was like he had dreamed of making this movie for 20 years, and somehow he got a big pile of money to make it, and unfortunately it didn't quite maybe work out.
Isn't this the guy who made Runaway Train?
It is, and also Tango and Cash.
Oh, yeah.
He has quite a bit of a random filmography.
But he
and-
draws directly from Tarkovsky, like Mirror Mirror.
But he did assist Tarkovsky in his younger days. That's how he came up, I think. And put what he learned to good use, sort of, I guess.
On
And-
Tango and Cash.
Yeah, and so when John picked this movie came up in my head, and I was mostly familiar with it because it's known as a terrible flop. So it's sort of on sort of top 10 lists of flops kind of stuff. That's sort of how I heard about it, and then I ended up at some point like watching a bunch of it on YouTube just out of curiosity. I think at the time it came out, I'd seen trailers for it, and it just seemed really weird. So I was kind of curious about it, and so I hadn't never actually watched the whole thing beginning to end, and it's pretty long. It turns out.
Yeah, as it happens.
So
I noticed that too.
clocked in at almost 2 hours.
It's funny how the flops seem longer than they really are.
Yeah,
sometimes.
But I have to say though, it is visually stunning. Like it is a lot of eye candy,
And
lot
ambitious.
of very ambitious, a lot of cool design, a lot of neat. I don't know. I like some of the directorial choices that were made. Some of the cast is great. Like it was probably one of Al Fanning's first big roles, and as a little girl, and she plays kind of the lead, and she's great in it.
I know, and she's like appropriately sexualized for someone of her age, with her clothes like being partially.
Oh,
removed.
right. That does happen later in the film.
It's a little.
I was paying a little bit less attention at that
She's
point.
not
but-
as covered as she should be, I think, for a kid of that age.
I suppose. But there's a lot of things in this movie that are kind of like that, where everything, it's sort of like a little off. First of all, just the take on the story is kind of strange, and it's kind of like you're kind of like, who is this movie for? Because it kind of feels like a Christmas family movie, like the way it's, and with the big budget and the way it's promoted, you kind of feel like maybe it is, but certainly not to an American audience, because a lot of it's a little too dark and intense and strange for children. For example, so instead of the Mouse King, which is in the original story, it's like the Rat King, and so you have these sort of evil rats that they're battling, and
I mean, it's like a fascist parable.
yes, that's it. Yes, and the way the production design and the way he handled the rats is very like they look like Nazis basically. Like
I mean, it's not
thinly,
subtle.
It's not subtle at all. Yeah, so they're supposed to be like fascists, but they're still kind of goofy and incompetent.
Instead of
at the
book
same
burning,
time.
they're like collecting toys.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
like
and they're
collecting
burning
toys
toys.
with like people in rags being like shoveled. Like it's sort
Yeah.
of the piles of remains before we send you off
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be put in the smoke factory.
I mean, in a sense, it is like very Russian sensibility, kind of like the way it goes kind of dark and sad with stuff. All right, well, so I sort of got ahead of myself there. I mean, it generally follows the same kind of plot as the classic ballet where, it's like, it has kind of most of the main
Yeah, it's
story
like
beats.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Well, it does up to a certain point, and I mean, like
Yeah.
I'm not what I know of the ballet I learned from Wikipedia, like Wikipedia synopsis. But I was interested to read the Wikipedia synopsis because basically, like the movie follows the ballet up until the point that the Nutcracker turns back into a prince.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
And then in the ballet, apparently the entire second act is
it's just happy ending.
it's just happy ending.
Yeah.
Right.
Like there's no like conflict after that point. Like they're just like in the land of sweets and they dance around and
Yeah.
everyone, and that's very strange to me that anyone structured a dramatic work in that way. but there's much more in the movie.
Yes, there is, and there's more of a like 3-act structure kind of thing, I guess, and hero's journey.
So
and
what you're
stuff.
saying is it's better than the ballet.
It's just strange in the different sorts of ways. But so right off the bat, so some of the strange elements that he brought in is that Freud is featured in the film and Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein is the
Nathan
children.
Lane being played by Nathan Lane.
So it's played by Nathan Lane. And even though I think the whole thing is supposed to take place in Germany, he's the only one with a German accent, a kind of a cartoonish German accent.
well, it's,
and everyone else has a
Swedish.
British. It has like
Well,
British
it's
accent.
all
Austrian,
over
whatever.
the place.
Yes, it's all over the place, but I mean, he really stands out as he's playing like a cartoonish version of Albert Einstein, and he's their
And he's
uncle.
playing
Uncle
the, like-
Albert.
Yeah, and he's like the like Rocky and Bullwinkle version of Albert Einstein.
Yes, yeah, and it's pretty terrible and takes you right out of the movie, and you're like, what is happening here?
Well, in the ballet,
and
he's
he also talks to the camera. He breaks the fourth wall, talks to the camera.
Ferris
And,
Bueller's it. Nice.
yeah, it's trying to be whimsical, but he's kind of in and out of the movie. He's not in
Right.
kind of
He's
at
Gandalf. He's there when they need him.
Yeah, but again, it just feels super random,
Yeah.
and you're just like, and then they use like the theory of relativity. They just kind of throw
Yeah,
them
he
there.
says everything's relative.
Yeah, and
Well,
then
the fact that they put lyrics to the ballet
Yes.
songs is
yes,
that
I was getting to
is
that.
just like
Yeah, so they wrote lyrics. There's songs in this movie which also sort of, and they're kind of just peppered here and there. It's
right.
not often enough that it feels like a musical. It's just a little bit, again, feels kind of random sometimes.
What was the relativity song? Was that Sugar Plum Fairy? Was that the music for it, or was it
I don't.
the?
It might have been.
'Cause
No,
that's the dun 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 dun.
That
dun,
came a
dun,
little
dun,
late.
Dun, dun, dun.
That came a little later.
That's later. Was it the dun 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 dun? dun? I don't know why. I'm
That's
trying
the
to-
waltz. They do that while they ice skate at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't recall.
It was one of the most distinctive melodies
Yeah.
from.
And he's playing it on piano. He's playing
Yeah.
piano while he's singing.
yeah, he
And
starts playing piano and then he stops playing
Is
piano.
it
and
March
music
of the Toy
continues.
Soldiers or something?
Might be, yeah. Although there is a March of the Toy Soldiers sequence, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know. So it starts out that way, and so he's the one that brings the doll, that gifts the dollhouse to children, and kind of gets the story started. And he's sort of like the zany uncle, and the parents are very like annoyed by him, especially the dad. So that's part of the story, I guess.
because
And
he's making the kids not serious enough.
yeah, exactly.
And
And
They're
dad
living
is
in their lives in
reprising
fantasy
his
land.
role from With Nail and I.
Yes, the dad is Richard E. Grant. We should.
yeah, also like
famous from
some-
Hudson Hawk.
some good actors, but kind of odd, weird casting. I would say like John Turturro.
Turturro,
yeah, but John Turturro actually does kind of a good
He
job
was
in this
fun,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he plays
and I
the
feel
Rat
like he's
King.
got the appropriate amount of like taking it seriously.
If
Well,
it was
I guess-
if it was a kids movie and on tone
Yeah,
like throughout, he would have been fine. Like he would like all those silly like threatening characters were cartoony enough.
Yeah.
Like it just
Except for
But
like the rats were like these like fascists.
right.
Right,
Well, that's
they're
what I'm
very
saying.
fascist,
But
there's
what
a lot of
I guess what I'm saying is
intensity.
that like John Turturro's like he was hamming it up. He was chewing on the scenery, and his mother character, the witch rat,
Yeah,
was
she's
doing the
great.
same.
She's
So-
great. I love her.
The challenge being that like they're the like these characters are not in the right movie
Right.
because
Yeah.
No,
And
they're all in the right movie, but they should be in several different movies.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
tone is all over the place. The elements are all over the place, and so like when the sort of fantasy starts out pretty, in the first act when she's, when she first goes to sleep, and then the Nutcracker, comes to life and takes her into the dollhouse, and that's when she sort of miniaturizes, and it takes you into this like.
And when the
crazy-
Nutcracker comes to life, it's a CG character.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't turn into a boy
Yeah.
with makeup on.
Right,
It's a
it's a CG
CG,
character.
like,
And it's a really cool design, and it's really the CG animation I think is really well done, and the compositing for the most part is really well done. The cinematography is beautiful in this
yeah,
movie.
the colors and lighting, yeah.
Yeah, and I looked up the cinematographer, and unfortunately, he's mostly done just kind of like meh movies. I think this was his like big chance to shine, and because it was a total bomb, maybe that didn't help his career at all. Which is sad because I think it was really like a beautiful looking movie.
As far as cinematography is
Yeah,
concerned,
yeah.
well done.
And I think design wise, there's a lot of
Yeah,
cool stuff
neat
going on.
costumes, yeah.
And like I kind of when I was watching this, I was like, maybe Keith will like this because it's like
It made
visually,
me wonder if
visually
I
it
had
seemed
seen
like your
this.
kind of movie.
If I had seen this when I was 12, I wonder what I would think of it. I think I would
Yeah.
probably really like it, but I'm not 12.
Yeah.
I'm a grown ass man, and I should never watch this movie.
I think like this is a tough like really you would have to be old enough to not be scared by stuff to
Yeah.
watch this movie, but like no, like you would basically have to be
I don't
a
think it's any
12-year-old.
scarier than Labyrinth
No, but
or
there's
Dark Crystal.
there's parts where like a little kid is like brought to tear and is like hysterically sobbing because
Yeah.
he wants to go home. Like it's darker. Like the Labyrinth has like sad and scary moments, but it's not like in this weird, sweet, surreal world. You have this guy wire jump like he's out of some like kung fu movie,
Well, I think-
and then like
I figured it out. They were like, that movie Hugo worked, and they're like, that's why
Did
somebody
this
took a
come out
chance.
before.
I think it's
When
right
did
around the same time as Hugo. I might be wrong about that, but
Oh, you might be right.
because I was trying to think of a movie that has
Hugo
the same.
was a year later.
Oh, okay.
So this should have been a warning for Hugo.
Then never mind. I was trying to think of other movies that have that same level of seriousness but are aimed toward kids, which I actually miss, like the Something Wicked This Way Comes type demographic of a movie. I just don't think they make enough of those anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe
just
this
don't
was
think
trying
this
to do
was-
that, but
Yeah, I think that's the problem. It didn't really know what it wanted to do. I think it's
Yeah.
really like that director's vision kind of thing. I just think his sensibility is just wrong for the subject matter and for the audience that
I kind of feel
would,
like
would pay to see this. you
it
know?
seems like it was not that, because it seems like it's fractured. It doesn't seem like it's a singular vision. I think that's the problem with this. I feel
don't
like
know.
it's as if this guy had a plan and somebody else kept trying to alter things
Yeah,
or
I mean,
maybe,
at the
something.
same
I don't know.
time, I felt like it was this guy he's saying ballet doesn't look good filmed, so I'm not going to make a ballet Nutcracker. And the only dancing he has is this like CG sequence, and that's actually kind of like weird where Elle Fanning is like dancing along with them, like
Yeah.
it didn't look very
and
good.
she's flying and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
And then it's almost like a translation issue. Like someone took Google Translate and flipped it like 2 or 3 times
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah.
And then because the dialogue is pretty stilted, and I'm pretty sure the mom, she's like a well-known Russian celebrity.
She
I
is?
think she was dubbed all
I
throughout.
feel like there's a lot of ADR in this movie, and it's because
Huh.
it really seemed to me like they were trying to film as much as possible without the lips moving. So they would shoot around the lips moving because they knew it was going to be going to 3 markets right away, and they wanted to do as little kind of like,
Oh, maybe.
kind of like,
Localizing.
yeah.
I mean, without it being a ballet, it's kind of a baffling choice of a thing
yes.
to dramatize because it's got what the story is let's call it thin.
Yes.
I mean, it's about and weird. Like a girl gets a nutcracker at night. She like goes down and like sees the nutcracker and like she shrinks down. And there's a fight between the nutcracker and toy soldiers and these mice and the Mice King. And at the end, they stab the Mouse King and the nutcracker becomes a prince. And then there's a happy ending. And that's it. And it's like I mean, it's a good story for like a dream. Like it
Yeah.
feels like
Yeah.
like a kid's dream.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
And then this happens, and then this happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And then this
Yeah,
happens.
Well,
absolutely.
it's
Totally,
it's a
totally.
little bit Gremlins though, like because the uncle in the ballet, I keep wanting to say musical or fairy tale, he's a foreign man, this kind of thing. Like he's like a black sheep of the family.
Mhm.
So when he comes on stage, he's mysterious, and he's one of the first like scary things that you get, and he's got an air of like otherworld.
This is in the ballet, not
This is in the ballet. Which is why it's like a disservice that Nathan Lane's character is so like cuddly and roly-poly and annoying.
But in the movie, he's a physicist. That's so
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
freak. But it gives like so this cursed object, this weird thing, you know, maybe it has rules to it, or it has like there's a story behind it. It's a monkey's paw, and this girl is drawn to it. And it's like it could be a tale of like sexuality. Is she threatened by her uncle's like otherness in this like tight world that she's in? Like there's some levels and layers in there. But again, it is a fairy tale with that, like
Yeah.
like a young girl's growth and like her love, like falling in love with this inanimate object that's like a cursed toy. You know, it's like Princess and the Frog kind of thing, and the outside threat that's coming with the Rat King and stuff. Like it's. I don't know. I see a little bit more in it, but I don't know in terms of dramatizing it more. Yeah, it really is better as a as a ballet.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also just like they just plucked all the wrong things out of the story, and they emphasize the wrong things, they just kind of don't really like take the time with anything. It's like it just really does feel like this, and then, you know, and. I mean, especially like that big opening. It also a lot of it just seems to be like just there for spectacle, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, like why, like for example, like why do the rats and the Rat King have all this like weird
Technology.
yeah, kind of sci-fi, like retro sci-fi technology stuff. Like there's all these.
Well, I feel like when the rats get there, don't they say that like they've kind of replaced the human? Like the humans are kind of
Right.
like they're the next.
I think part of it too is like they're very much like industrial revolution. Like everything's black smoke and
Right, and they're
machines
they're also
and-
the master
steampunk.
race who's going to wipe out everyone else to
right. So they
and
want
destroy the world.
They're going to
protect
ratify
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Yes. So he like mechanized them for that reason, I guess. But it's just again strange and that first fantasy sequence is just like over the top and in an almost nonsensical way. Like you're just kind of like, what is like there's just these things that just kind of happen and they don't
You mean like as
they don't
they go
move the
up
story
tree
forward.
kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, as they
and
go
like
up the
he
tree.
finally gets turned into a real boy, which is kind of creepy too. Like his hand
Yes.
turns like
Well, that's
wood
because
to
the
flesh.
fairy like
yeah, but it's kind of unclear how
Can't-
that happened.
right, and like it's strange. He goes and hides, and I guess maybe because they didn't want to spend the money for the transformation beyond the hand or something.
But
I don't know.
yeah, and her like reads are all off. That's why I really think she was dubbed. Like it's her, she just didn't have like a consistent good read to
Yeah, I'm
her
not
voice.
sure.
She wasn't intoning. It was just weird.
Yeah,
I still think that was a choice. I think a lot of that was a choice, and they ended up dubbing it.
and then sorry, go ahead.
No, I found it weird that when he was the CG Nutcracker, he had a different voice
Yes.
than the kid version.
Yes,
And and I'm pretty sure it was the voice of in Harry Potter when they have the Myrtle, Moaning Myrtle. I think
Right,
she's the
girl.
voice
I think,
of that Nutcracker character.
it's Shirley Henderson plays the voice of the
I don't know
Nutcracker.
who that is.
I think she's transpotted Bridget Jones'
No, that's
Diary.
her. That's
Yeah, Morning Myrtle. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's just so strange. So there's also all these action kind of sequences that are
Yeah, these
again
weird set pieces.
like they really feel like action scenes, and they're too intense for what the rest of the movie is supposed to be. This magical children's fairy tale, and then all of a sudden it turns the last act just really turns into an action movie, really
yeah.
like action adventure
Chase.
film.
There's a chase element to it, and yeah.
Because the magic really only shows up when they're going to the like that tree sequence in the beginning. That's kind of it,
And it's like crammed with it.
right? And
It's
then
like all
otherwise,
back to back
there's
to
like
back, and you're
body
like, what?
dysmorphia, like weird shit that's like
Yes.
grounded in reality. So it doesn't. It
Right.
doesn't. There's nothing playful at all.
What's the
No,
body?
it's
What's the
well,
body?
like for
dysmorphia
example,
then?
like John, the Rat King, when he starts to yell, they'll like CG a like big rat mouth on him,
yeah.
and most of the time they just have makeup,
just
which
make,
is a
like-
really nice makeup job. I think it's like a nicely done.
It's
But
like
then they
Planet of
enhance
the
it.
Apes style. Yeah.
They enhance it with CG, which makes it strange. And there's just like too many characters. Like so much of it could have been cut down. There's just so much fat in this movie.
Well, like those three weird unicycle monkey, the fat guy, and the like reggae
It's
Jamaican drummer
yeah,
guy.
yeah, it's because they're from that stuff that's from the original source material, I think.
Oh, weird.
Because they're supposed to be all like
The toys and the decorations.
yeah, except I think normally it's just like a tin drum or they're all like other toys, and here they're just weird, strange characters.
They're extreme
But
versions.
the other
That
strange thing,
sequence
the
when
other
they pull the kid's head off.
the other strange things they do is there's all
Did
these.
I miss that part? Who gets their
Maybe.
head pulled off?
There's
The
like
drummer kid.
there's like two layers of every character. There's sort of like the real world equivalent and then the fantastical equivalent. And even with the rats, there's these humans dressed as rat people, and then there's real quote unquote like rat looking rats that are CG rats. Also, like featuring
with
there's
like
just all
humanish faces.
yeah. So there's all these layers as well that just add to it's just a mess. It's just a confusing mess.
Well, the rats after they crash this air vehicle, the John
Yeah, they run
Turturro's
away.
character runs away and turns into like
Yeah,
like a regular rat.
yeah,
type
so they
of
can
thing.
run away and hide. And in the beginning of the movie, they kind of
They show them
them like
Show 'em a couple
scurrying
times,
around.
yeah.
So they're kind of setting, kind of hinting at that coming up. It's just
So they're were
strange.
rats. That's
Yeah,
pretty much
exactly,
I
yeah.
guess.
So
I don't know.
Ugh.
what you're saying is you made us watch this movie, and
Yes, whoa, ye. Watch this movie.
So I have a question. So is there a reason why this is always associated with Christmas?
The Nutcracker?
Nutcracker. There's no like. Is it the Christmas tree?
It's because it's a nutcracker.
It's a Christmas tree.
Yeah, but I mean, a nutcracker's
And
useful
there's
all
gin-
year
there's
round.
also
You eat nuts all
well,
the time.
in the original thing, there's also like gingerbread men, and there's a lot of Christmassy
Yeah, but
stuff.
so this does take place like in a Christmas time or something?
I don't know, but it,
the
Because Sugar Plum Fairy, right? That doesn't
basically the
mean that's
Nutcracker
definitely,
is our Lord Jesus Christ,
okay.
and only the love of a beautiful young woman, like
Like Elf
Just like the Bible
right,
says.
and then they will repel the Rat King, aka the Muhaji.
Now, I do associate nutcrackers with Christmas, though. Not because of the Nutcracker Suite, but because my parents love to fill up my stocking with like full nuts. Do you guys have this thing,
Yeah.
like where it's like,
no.
I don't know if that's a Midwestern thing, but that's my father always like a bunch of nuts and oranges.
yeah, nuts
Yeah.
and oranges, totally the same thing. And I'm not a fan of cracking my own nuts. I like nuts that have been shelled for me and that have been roasted and salted.
Mm-hmm.
Those are delicious. Nuts in their natural form are not necessarily the finest of foods, I find.
They're perfect if you're going on a 40-day hike.
Yeah,
But this being modern times, like, let's get rid of them shells.
yeah. So stocking stuffer, nuts.
They got machines for those things. Let's just.
So that's why I associate the Nutcracker with Christmas.
Would you
beyond
guys have
the
the
normal.
actual Nutcrackers, like the wooden,
No, we had like old ones that were just basically like pliers.
like you'd use for lobster?
Exactly.
They have the hinge, and you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had those too. We used to pretend they were nunchucks. I don't know how we made that leap.
Or like butterfly
Butterfly
knives?
Yeah.
I was trying to dig up why the Nutcracker got associated with Christmas, but
But I do believe that must be some traditional thing to have the nuts and the oranges. That's
Yeah.
got to be a thing.
it seems like it mostly got associated with Christmas in the U.S.
The Nutcracker did.
Mhm.
Macaulay Culkin one that came out in the 90s was also released at Christmas time. It was a Christmas movie.
His Nutcracker.
There was a
Right.
Macaulay Culkin movie that was the Nutcracker.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I don't remember.
But he's the one who brings Jesus to life
Oh.
in that one.
So Culkin, I assume Culkin plays the Nutcracker in that. Is that
He is the prince when it becomes human. I
Okay.
think. Yeah.
He's our Lord Jesus.
Yeah, and I think he only shows up. I think he only shows up like at the end.
To repel the heretics?
No,
Is that what the rats are?
to,
Is it a
um,
Crusades parable?
No, it's like he dies, and then they move the rock. He's like,
Oh.
"Here I am. I'm
The
alive
Rock
again."
says that? Or
Well,
just like
yep.
Jesus said, "Here I am." Well, gotta go, guys.
See y'all later.
see you
Stay
pretty
classy.
soon. Keep an eye out for a boiling sea.
That's the problem with operating on God's time. He probably thinks that he's just been gone for like
like
just
dog
a few
years.
seconds. We're just hanging out waiting.
Yeah, but how old is he in God years?
I don't know what else we got to say about this other than
John
it's just a
Turturro's
total
great.
mess.
Nathan Lane is
He's
hammy as ever.
Richard
Somebody
Grant
needs
is
to.
wasted.
It's kind of painful. Though.
Somebody really needs to kind of like reel him in a little bit. And is it Grant?
Mhm.
Rich, I think people needed to reel him in a little bit too.
Really?
He went from 0 to 60 very quick. It's just like he went from upset dad to crazy mad dad, like to John Lithgow.
But honestly, I
But
feel like
he-
the
but-
direction was
Yeah.
all over the place.
But the
it
magic
seems.
pebble, Keith.
I know, like that's another
Magic
like.
pebble. Check your
Ah.
pockets. Check your pockets.
So basically, like he kind of plays part of the like real world arc of the movie where, you know, the dad is kind of like the skeptic and he's like, oh, you're filling their heads with all these, you know, bad stories and it's messing them up. And then he reminds him like, oh, well, when you were a child, you had a magic rock. And
Remember?
so
And you turned out fine.
yeah, and it's just like another one of those weird wrinkles that just adds to the, you know, convolutedness.
Well, yeah, like Nathan Lane was kind of playing a Mary Poppins character at that
Yeah.
moment.
Yes.
Like he's like the kooky kind of magical
Right.
outsider who comes in
Kinda
and
like a
teaches
Bert.
the
Yeah. 'Cause he
teaches
shows
the
Wait, is he
bad-
Mary Poppins or Bert? I mean, are we
Well, he's
mixing
kind of
these?
like he's from Mary, like he's Bert because he just like shows back up as other characters for no reason too.
Yeah.
Does he?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, in
I still think
in
he's
the
more like Mary
imaginary
Poppins.
world,
I'm with you,
he
Dan.
pops up.
Well, so this is the other like theory on this that I didn't just come up with
Is
that- is that this is like a Gilliam style Brazil where it's more
Yes.
of it's more of a parable about like the invasion of Poland or Austria by the Germans, and that this girl has been interned, and that this is like her last moments living out.
Kind
like-
of a occurrence on Owl Creek Bridge type of a situation.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but but I did when I was trying to describe this film to people. I did describe it as the Nutcracker meets Brazil,
Yeah.
and then I would get a
Brazil nuts cracker.
lot. But unfortunately, I would get a lot of "What's Brazil? Like, you mean the
Aw.
country?" And I'm like, "No, the movie." So that's too bad.
So did you try to tell this to a lot of people?
Yes, I did. Well, a few people because I was watching this movie and it took me several days because
Several sittings.
I had to pause and so forth. And people would be like, "What are you watching?"
You should have put that in the as a disclaimer in the notes when you decided to choose this movie. May take you several sittings to get
I thought
through.
that would be self-evident. I honestly didn't think you guys would finish it,
Yeah.
but
My
just
strategy
like
was
you
just not to pay that close attention.
didn't. Also a
Another
good
way of-
strategy. You could just look over every now and then and be like, "What?"
I did maybe watch this at work,
Yeah.
and that involves
So you missed
often
like
just
the
listening
Damien
to it.
Hirst sight gag where they electrocute the shark.
But oh yes, oh my goodness, that was so strange.
I did
it's,
miss
It's
that.
one of the first big like Rat King scenes when they
Yeah,
introduce
he has
him,
this song.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah.
and then why does he electrocute the shark?
I have no idea. It's an accident.
It's
And
a
then-
giant. He's standing behind a giant tank, and there's a shark in it, and then he electrocutes it somehow.
And then it like gets replaced with a shark that's almost a display shark, like a Hirst style display shark. Very weird.
But the Rat King's mom, who kind of plays like the person that's really like pulling his strings behind the scenes, and is also like takes this strange drug that gives her magic powers.
Yeah.
And she's like, so she's played.
She's
by
also the
same-
nanny in
yeah,
real
she's
life.
the same
in-
actress
in their
from the
family.
who plays the alcoholic nanny in real life. Where there's early in the film, like you just see they cut away to her running down the hallway, and then she stops and takes a drink,
Yeah.
and then exits, and that's it. And you're like,
No,
okay.
somebody does mention it too. I think
Yeah,
later
yeah.
on, like, Nanny, are you
Yeah.
drinking?
But
or something
again, one
like
of
that.
those things that you could have just, if I was the editor, I would have just cut that out. Been
Well,
like,
also
"You
the
don't need
acting
that."
of her drinking that was almost like she'd been in the desert for 15
Yes.
days, and it was her
well,
first drink
you
of
know,
water.
When
She's
you're
like,
an alcoholic
Yeah,
and you have to
maybe.
sneak it because you're taking care of children, that
Yeah,
does
maybe.
happen.
But she's the actress who plays in the Harry Potter movies, who's ends up being Hagrid's love
Oh, she's
interest.
the
Yeah,
giantess.
but as the scenes with her and the Rat King, I thought were really fun. And if it was a different movie, it would have been great. I guess I don't know.
If we could have just made the movie of the Rat King and his mother's relationship,
So Dan, did you
played
like
by
this
Albert
movie?
Brooks.
Dude, I like this movie.
As a man who has to watch bad movies as a part of your living,
You'd think that I would be inured to them by now. You'd think that I would be able to
have a thick
Take it.
skin.
this movie kept my attention to about the time that it diverged from the text, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as the boy gets turned back into the Nutcracker
Again.
then my phone became a lot more interesting than the movie. I would in fact look up every once in a while and just be like, why are things exploding?
Yeah.
Like this is an adaptation of a ballet.
And the mice have guns.
Yeah,
Suddenly they have machine guns.
Yeah, it's like the ballet. The second half is all like happy sugar plums, and this one, the second half is all like war. It's like a war film of sorts. Like
Yeah.
And like one kid's captured and in jail.
yes,
The brother, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the brother he's just breaking things all the time and just being generally bad.
But the songs, right? Songs
Oh.
save it? No?
Nope.
Yeah, no. I mean,
They
again,
have some famous lyricists who
They
worked
did.
on it.
yeah, it was Tim Rice
Yes.
who wrote.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the guy who composed it was the guy who wrote like the Solaris soundtrack.
Tartov.
I mean, they're mostly playing Tchaikovsky, which that's good stuff.
Yeah, but
Yep.
then they like
Yeah.
layer in some rock.
That's true.
Yeah.
At times.
Thank God. That's what Tchaikovsky needed, was a little bit of
Yeah, an update.
chest hair.
That's
yeah.
what this whole thing just needed a modern.
Yeah, yeah,
update.
yeah. It's
There's-
like the Matrix meets the Nutcracker meets Brazil.
There's some unconventional storytelling moments too.
That's an understatement.
Well, just right from the beginning, it opens on this like wintry scene,
Yes.
and people are skating, and it's this town square, and
Except there's a big tree in the middle of the ice skating rink somehow.
Uh huh.
it's replacing the fountain. And then this like cart pulls up with an orchestra who's playing the music,
Yeah.
and then cut. We're into this like there was no
transition.
reason for
Yeah.
that. Like
Just
it wasn't like an
establishing-
overture.
Yeah, and also like I saw that and I was like, man, this looks really expensive, and it was so short. And like you said, boom, it cuts away, and
Right.
there were no main
but
characters. in
between
it.
like from there to the rest, everything else was spot on. It was greatly done. The one
That part just seems off.
there
That's
was
all.
one thing that really bugged me when they're in the airplane. I
Just
think
the
it was-
one thing.
I think it was
Uh-huh.
after the crash. First off, everyone's kind of fine after the crash.
Yeah.
Her little brother's fine.
Well, it's the
everyone's
superior
fine.
craftsmanship of the
Right.
rats. They're like great engineers
But-
for safety.
Elle Fanning is
her,
her clothes are disheveled. Her
Her
face
dress
is
is
cut.
torn.
She's got a cut on she's bleeding on her forehead, and she's like filthy.
Mhm.
And
And the prince says,
what does the prince say?
"You look terrible."
yeah,
Oh yeah.
which is just
Well,
weird.
then seconds after that, they cut to like they're in the back of this destroyed thing, this like chicken helicopter thing,
yeah,
and
Chicken helicopter.
yeah, it has feet, so you can grab the good
Mhm.
guys with it.
then it cuts to the front cockpit, like an exterior shot of the cockpit, and she's suddenly like behind her brother, like a phantom.
Uh-huh.
So I think she's been dead for a good period of time. at this
That's
point.
more evidence of your theory.
That she's haunting this young man. He survives overall because he befriends the guards. And
So
that's the other dark.
So
part
at the
of this
end,
whole-
he's totally aloof to her, right? At the end, after like
The
the,
brother,
whole
you mean?
no
Or
the
the prince?
the prince,
Mhm.
and he's like, "You look terrible," and then she's like, "What?" And then he's like, "Hooray!" Like being lifted up in triumph for defeating the Rat King, and he's off to become the prince again or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's just kind of left in the hey, what about me kind of situation, and then. The fairy lady's like, "Oh, you got to go home now. This is all a dream. You've been dreaming this whole time."
Yeah.
Did I miss that part? Was the prince always that aloof to her,
No, well, a little bit.
or was
like,
that just like a weird oversight?
It was just a weird thing. I think it's just because she had to go back home, and it was the end of the adventure for her, so they couldn't. I don't know.
they couldn't justify having the movie go on any longer.
But it's they basically like. I think he just maybe because he had been thinking about this movie for 20 years, he just like, just crammed it with too many ideas. He'd had too much time to think about it, and I mean,
There's no way he'd been thinking about this for 20 years. What happened was 20 years ago, he was said to somebody, his auntie or something, "Would it be cool if I made like a modern Nutcracker thing?"
maybe I don't know.
And then 20 years later, somebody's like, "Well, you need to make a movie." He's like, "Oh, that Nutcracker thing I've always been thinking
But
about."
it was,
Because
it's ambitious. I mean, he spent $90 million making this movie.
What did it gross?
16 million.
16.
and that was worldwide.
Mhm.
You know, so it
Wow.
Even in Hungary.
yeah, so
in the
a
Hungarian
bona fide bomb.
dollar.
It is really fun to read the reviews for this film. It's universally like just horribly panned.
Yeah, Ebert has some pretty like brutal things.
Yes.
I love that it made it to the point where Ebert even covered it.
I mean,
Because I don't remember this
when you
being in a
spend
theater
90,
or
90
anything.
million on a movie, you know, you
Mhm.
gotta take
Well, see
notice.
the difference. Like we've had distance from it. It's not quite a decade away from it. But back then, he was warning people, "Don't go see this in 3D. It's an expensive ticket." But now we can say, you know what? TVs, you can have 3D in your home.
Don't go see this
Get
at
it
home.
on Blu-ray. You can enjoy this now with a distance of time.
Uh-huh.
Like Elle Fanning has grown up. There's like
Yeah.
So do you think? So do you think?
If you
so
wanna-
John Turturro and Nathan Lane, both super acclaimed, great at their craft. Do you think they read this script and was just like, oh yeah, I'm in it?
I think they just got. I don't know how that stuff works, but I would just feel like they were like, "Oh, this will be fun," and look at how much money they're giving me.
Yeah.
So look at how much of $90 million I'm getting.
Like, well, I'll play a rat. That's fun. You know, I'll be Albert Einstein. Sure. It's just.
Beats another week out playing the producers. Playing on the
But what I'm
producers.
saying
Futures
is
of
like
Hungary.
it is ripened with age. So I would go watch this movie.
I don't.
It
It's
is-
one of those like I don't know what it is about this movie. Like it's not one of those bad movies that's going to become a cult classic. I think it's because they spent too much money on it. You know, it's like too well produced.
There needs to be some
off
kind of
kilter.
Like
formula or something.
not bad in the
we
correct
need, We
way.
need to figure out the formula of what makes a good bad movie because this doesn't make it.
No, it's a bad movie. I
It's-
mean,
yeah.
sorry to steal your
No, it's
formula.
fine.
Oh,
I
yeah.
find this movie actively unpleasant, so I agree with everything that's being said. Like, it's just off-putting. Like, there's something sour about it.
Well, I thought
Yeah.
that the director's vision came across.
Feels like failure.
when when the queen says to her, "This is a dream. You have to go home," and it turns to the audience and says, "Don't you wish this was a dream?"
It turns to the audience and says,
Wake up.
and this is your nightmare, and you'll never get to leave.
Hit rewind and start again.
But hey, beautiful movie, right?
some
Yeah.
like very ambitious, interesting visuals in it. It's just
Yeah, it's very colorful. Like
Yeah.
that scene when they're up in the tree and the shimmering lights are
Yeah.
like lighting them just so. Like just a lot of nice stuff.
So let me paint you a picture.
okay.
You've gotten tickets to go with your family to the Boston Pops
Okay.
to see the annual Nutcracker show. You're all dressed up. You've just had a nice like sort of
Brunch before
brunch, like a nice meal with everyone. It's wintry outside. There's a little bit of like dusting of snow on the ground. You get into the theater. It's like kind of warm. You have your coats on your laps, and it's like a nice balance of like chilliness and warmth. And they start up the music,
Mhm.
and a screen lowers, and they begin projecting. They ask you to reach under your seats and take out your 3D glasses.
And
With
you're
that-
like, thank God! I thought I was gonna have to see some boring ass dancing.
Now that you're, and I guess you're not, now that you've been,
Educated.
yes, you've watched it through. Would you enjoy watching other people watch this movie? The Schadenfreude?
If they didn't expect to see it, I would be curious to see the
I
audience
mean,
reaction.
If I could literally just watch them, like if I was behind the screen and I cut out eye holes,
And
like I was a spy with
And
a
you had
newspaper.
you had opera glasses.
Yeah.
There was just a painting behind the
Exactly.
TV. The eyes are going. Roop, roop.
All right, what if you one step further? What if you went and it was a theatrical, like a theater adaptation,
rendition of this?
Yes.
Oh, with like people turning the sets
No,
around?
like full on like Broadway, you know, so they could really spend the big bucks on fancy sets and like flying
I mean, honestly, when they were,
helicopter things and
that's why I
Chicken
think like
helicopter.
as they're making this whole thing, they're like, oh, this is going to be, this is going to be the new Nutcracker. We are going to have a stage show. Like, this is going to be the next thing. Like, I think they were all in.
they sure were.
They had a good cast. They had a good
Well,
art directors.
I mean,
they had a good
arguably, they had a good
cinematographer.
director and stuff, but
I don't know. Like I'm looking at his, Tango and Cash. If that's your high watermark,
I mean, it's not. I don't know. It's watchable.
I think-
Watch Tango
It's been
and
a
Cash
long
again.
time.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
But Tango and Cash stays in its lane a little bit. Like you know what you're getting.
Tango and Cash is not a good movie, but it is very fun.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
Like-
bad movie.
Yes.
And- yes.
But it's not like purporting to be a blockbuster like holiday classic in the making,
Yeah.
right? Like you're not going to go see Tango and Cash 3D with or 4D with Atmos like moving chairs or anything.
On St. Tango's Day.
$90 million. I mean, imagine what you can do with $90 million.
They're making the Nutcracker 3D.
It'd be a Merry Christmas. You could feed a lot of hungry people at Christmas time with $90 million.
You could also buy a lot of tickets to Nutcracker 3D for a lot of hungry people.
Feed their souls.
They just watch the movie.
I have something for you, sir. Is it a sandwich? No, better. Here, put on these glasses.
Can a sandwich make you laugh and cry, sir? No, but this movie can.
Did I say laugh?
Anyway, Nutcracker. Don't see it. Jules made us watch it, and
Yeah, sorry.
it's
I made,
new to you.
Hey, I made myself watch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
I
yeah.
feel whoa.
I think there are people who
Tied.
could take it
Be
cult
toad.
movie. Like if you learned the lyrics to the songs and like sung them and threw stuff at the screen.
It'd be like a Rocky Horror type of a
I
situation.
don't know. I
Yeah.
just don't see it.
Now, I get the impression that a couple of you have seen the ballet. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it on TV.
All
Seen
right.
it a few times.
I've seen the Macaulay Culkin one in the 90s and
Okay.
don't remember it.
I've seen it
It's on
stage.
VHS.
And
I've never
I-
seen the ballet, but I had a tape of the Nutcracker Suite,
Mhm.
which is the
Mm.
cut down version of the music from the Nutcracker
Mhm.
that I listened to over and over again as a child. Like, I have a lot of fondness for the music for this. So
It's great music. I mean, it's what made it popular. It's great
Yeah.
music. I mean, I've never actually sat through the whole ballet. I've watched it in bits and pieces on TV, kind of thing. And I was always like, I don't know what's going on here, but I like the music.
I've seen the ballet. I've done it.
He can die.
Yeah,
You've seen them all. You've seen the Nutcracker 3D. You've seen the ballet. You've seen the Macaulay Culkin. You're like an expert.
I know. I've never cracked my own nut.
there's one nut I can never crack, and that's love.
All right, then. I think we can put this one to rest.
Yeah, put it back in the box.
Yes.
All right, good pick, Jules. So where can people
Hmm.
watch this
Bad
again?
pick. On YouTube.
Okay,
It's free. It's free there.
and if
For now.
and you can
You're
can
not
probably
gonna-
They've
rent
already-
it or buy it on any.
Yeah, if you
streaming
want to
service.
help the investors, if you feel sorry for them.
If you feel bad for the people who lost, what, $77 million?
at least. And, so much pride. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I wonder if they like trick people around Christmas time into watching or buying this movie.
You know that's part of the plan is that grandmas are going to buy this for their kids.
Yeah, I'm sure it ended up in a lot of 99-cent bins kind
Yeah.
of situations. People got this in
No,
their
do you think it
stockings.
even made it to DVD?
Yeah, it did, because as a DVD, it had a different title. It was The Nutcracker: The Untold Story,
The Untold Story. See?
because it
Now we're
wasn't
talking.
it wasn't on 3D probably on DVD.
That sounds like an E special.
Yes,
like Tchaikovsky, like,
behind the music.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it does prepare you a little bit more for like this is going to be kind of strange.
And then things turn dark.
Everybody hurts sometimes.
Tchaikovsky,
Those were dark years for Tchaikovsky.
as he rolled over in his grave. All right, so go watch it. That's my vote.
Hmm.
Holt says watch it. I say don't.
I say put it on YouTube.
I
See what
say
happens.
it's all relative.
All right. I think we're done talking
Dan?
about
Yes,
the
I'm
Nutcracker.
done.
Are you
I'm
gonna
ready
make
to move
everyone
on.
watch it when you go to Christmas?
No, I'm never going to
Hey,
think about this
Are
movie
you gonna
ever again.
Are you gonna talk about it on the Fob House? That way, you've already seen it. Done.
True. I could force the other two to watch this. So
That's
they
when
can
you
share
set up
in
your
my pain.
set up your painting and. Where'd Dan go?
I said he was taking a pee, but he's been gone for so long.
Such a weird portrait of himself.
Wait,
over
wait,
there.
wait! I think I hear him snickering.
I guess he's laughing at his own pee.
All right, Jules, good pick. Great pick.
Hmm.
What an amazing pick.
Wow, amazing.
Topic.
Would you like to hear it?
So 3D.
Yeah.
Sounds hard.
Nein. The hardest thing in the world to understand is income tax. This is a piece of strudel. If you're with someone tall, truly vast, unsurpassed, built to last, they will think you're small. Never mind, after all, when you meet a petite, short and sweet, they will think you're tall. Up is down, take is give, in is out, whisper, shout, there's no doubt, it's all relative. Who's to say what is or is not? Right,
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error. Just
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of New to You Show. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at LordJoho and on Instagram at board_ghost, and you can listen to my RPG storytelling podcast at boardghost.com, and you can listen to my book club podcast at Wound and Stab. We're reading Daniel Lufsky's House of Leaves, so if you've ever been daunted by that book, read along with us. Maybe we can all get through it together.
Maybe.
Keith, where can people find you?
You can find me on earthlingkeith.com, but I just want to take a second to apologize to all of our dedicated listening audience out there and say, we will start hopefully suggesting things that are actually good again soon.
I don't know.
Not next time, though.
maybe that's a New Year's resolution or something. I don't know. But,
Season 4.
But Jules, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BeautifulJules. And how about you, Dan?
You can find me on Twitter at Dan K. McCoy. That's Dank McCoy. You can listen to my podcast at flophousepodcast.com.
All right.
I feel like if you enjoyed this episode, you will definitely enjoy the Flophouse
yeah.
even more.
Because they actually
Because they're funny.
Yeah. And they talk about the movies betterly.
And they often sing about them, too.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go.
Dan, any movies coming up that you want to highlight? This is going to come out.
For the Flophouse?
Yeah.
I'm not sure when this is coming out. We do our Cagemas celebration every Christmas where we watch a Nicolas Cage movie. Saint Nicolas Cage, who is obviously the patron saint of bad movies, not because he is bad, because he is great. And he often throws himself into the worst roles.
But he's sometimes bad.
He sometimes is bad, but mostly when he's not trying.
Yeah.
When he's not trying, he can be kind of boring. But when he's on, he is flamboyant and terrific. But yeah, we probably did a Nicolas Cage movie.
All right.
What was your favorite one from the past for Nicolas Cage-mas?
Jeez.
Did you do Embrace of the Vampire?
Come back to me.
Okay. Did you guys ever do Embrace of the Vampire?
No, we didn't. That's out of our purview because it was a little older than the stuff that we do.
Gotcha.
I can do this. I can tell you what the best movie that we watched with him and it was not that one. Oh, this is not. Oh, yeah. Left Behind was a pretty good one. It's not the craziest Nicolas Cage role, but
Is that the Kirk Cameron?
It's
the
they
movie version.
Made a
Oh, it's the like
big
religious
budget
thing?
religious
Yeah.
version.
He's in that?
Well, no. So they
made
had the
two.
books, then they had like the
Yeah.
mini-series that Kirk Cameron was in.
Right.
And then Left Behind was like...
Well, Kirk Cameron was in it, but I think he's part of he's part of the writing of it, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he's just like a super Christian dude.
Well,
Yeah.
of course he is.
But Nicolas Cage was in a movie adaptation of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
they made a semi-big budget version with Nick Cage.
Why was he? Is he religious?
He just he has a bunch of castles that he has to pay for.
Oh, so his god is money.
Yeah, he does things like buys a pyramid in a cemetery in New Orleans, and in anticipation of being interred there someday, and he has to pay for that kind of thing. Also, I want to highlight Stolen, which is kind of like Nicolas Cage's Taken, and Trespass, which was a really good one that Joel Schumacher directed and had Nicole Kidman was also in it, and it was bonkers.
All right. So Cagemas coming up on the
Yeah.
Flophouse. All right. And that's theflophouse.com.
I believe so.
Cool. All right, Dan. Thanks again for joining us. We have.
Well, we hope you come back next week. I mean, we have to see what's going on next week, but I hope you can fit it in.
Before we roll into what's coming up next week and roll out of here, what's new to me this week, John?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. So I watched a Netflix documentary. I watched Jim and Andy, which is a Netflix documentary about the making of Man on the Moon. And it's ostensibly about that, but it's really more about like Jim Carrey looking back at his career as a comedian and looking back at Andy Kaufman's career as a comedian and talking
and thinking maybe I should have died.
and thinking of, and basically like
I actually like Jim Carrey,
but dissecting
that Penguins movie though.
But like dissecting identity and talking about what does it mean to play a character, what does it mean to be seen as a character and like cast as that character, and kind of like when are you. There's some like it's a weird documentary. It's not the best. Basically, Bob Zamuda and Andy's old girlfriend, who's a documentarian, followed him around on set while they were making Man on the Moon.
So this is the lady that Love played.
Courtney Love.
Played her. Okay.
And Man on the Moon is a biopic about Andy Kaufman, and Jim Carrey plays Andy Kaufman in the film.
Right. And Bob Zamuda is Andy Kaufman's good best pal.
Yeah.
Right.
And in the making of the film, like he really like went full on into character on and off screen, and just kind of became Andy Kaufman for a while. And so it's part of it is about that.
Yeah, so he was being method, but he was being Andy as Andy. He was also being Andy as Tony Clifton. So he would
Some
like
of Andy
do
Kaufman's
Clooney
alter
Stiff
egos.
and stuff and shit on people, like be pretty mean off set, like Tony Clifton would
Yeah,
be.
I had heard that at the time too, like when the movie came out that was a thing. And I just kind of think that's, man, I would hate to work with somebody who does that all the time. It's just kind of like, you're an actor. Be like, I understand be method, but be method like between the action and like you don't have to take that home with you, Daniel Day-Lewis. I'm sorry.
I think that there's a little difference in that, like the character that he's playing, like Andy Kaufman is a shy, like he's like a version of Jim Carrey, like who he's seeing part of himself in this character too. Like it's a young person who's trying to appeal to his father and prove himself, and so it's just interesting to see him talk about identity and see a documentary about someone embodying a character who plays characters himself.
Yeah,
and just kind of like, but also talking about this guy who's been in the Truman Show and who does a lot of movies about identity and. Like Michel Gondry, he said, was looking across at him as they're first talking about doing Eternal Sunshine, and Jim Carrey had gone through a breakup and was just a broken man. And Michel Gondry's like, "You are beautiful. You are so broken."
Yeah, can you be this for the next 6 months while we film this?
He says for a year, like he's like, don't get better.
See, that to me is like
so
that's not acting to me. That's just kind of like making yourself miserable. They did that with the guy in the last what is it called, the Suicide Squad movie. The guy that was playing the Joker was supposedly Jared Leto was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be the Joker all the time." It's like, no, he's a homocidal maniac. You're not like allowed to do that. It's just
speaking
also,
of that,
he's not in that
fair.
much of the movie.
That movie would have been so much better if they were like, you're gonna be like everything else is crazy. Your entire squad are gangsters, but you are like the old 1960s Joker. Like you're in the
Sid
suit.
Caesar.
You have a Sid Caesar like mustache painted over.
No,
with
Caesar Romero.
Caesar
Sorry.
Romero. Yeah.
Sid
Like,
Caesar.
you are Jared Leto as Caesar Romero Joker, because it would be so weird.
A cool contrast,
and
he would seem more crazy.
Right, because when he does crazy shit, like he just looked crazy, and whereas the Joker,
You're right. That's the only problem with that movie. That would have solved
But
it.
in terms of that character, like honestly, that would have made, you don't need him in there otherwise. But we don't need to dissect Suicide Squad.
There was an interview with Peter O'Toole, pretty famously, I think in the 80s, and somebody was asking him about the method acting and stuff like that, and they're like, so when you do what's your take on acting and he's just like, I'm an actor. When I come in, I act. When I leave, I go home. It's just like he's like, that's my job. And I just always thought that was like, yeah, it's like more of a craft. It's not like this.
I mean,
It's not this metaphysical transformation.
You say that, but I don't
hocus
think it's
pocus.
like, especially like in this day of like celebrity, like, this was Jim Carrey was the guy who wrote himself the $10 million check and cashed it through, or had it to cash 3 years later or whatever. So
What's that story?
he was like a budding actor and wrote himself a check for $10 million. Like he was a big secret guy. So he's a little metaphysic in that.
The secret that Jules brought to the show that time?
Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. But he's like, it's also been really, I would recommend checking out interviews with Jim Carrey on the press tour for this movie because, I mean, also there was recently like a short doc online about his painting because he just like dove into painting. And he's quite the painter now. Like he does it all. Like
That's cool.
he's done it so much. Like he's a legit painter. And like a lot of what he's talking about on tour is that like he's that thing dissecting his own identity to where he's like he was saying Jim Carrey was like a persona.
Right.
And now that's gone, and he's like, I don't know.
Now he's James.
He's like super like now he just never has a normal interview with anyone. Like he always gets metaphysical and weird and says things, and you're kind of like not sure what he's talking about. But he's like
He's gone full Bob Dylan.
like he's out there, and he looks a little crazy. He's got wild eyes. But he seems to be happier.
But to wrap this up, that's on Netflix. Jim and Andy. The other thing that sort of like, dovetailed with that was I was listening to a podcast and there was an episode about, what was the podcast? I sent it to Zoya and told her to listen to it too.
Yes.
Oh, it was The Canon.
Yeah.
So the Canon podcast where they like try to nominate movies for the best movie of all time. We've talked about it before. But they had Brett Morgan on talking about he was nominating Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control.
Which is an Errol Morris documentary.
Right. And it was interesting. Him and Earl, like he is a child of Earl Morris in terms of his documentary making. Like his old girlfriend was working on Fast, Cheap while he was making it. So it's interesting to hear him talk about documentary and how documentary for him, like you don't do a straight interview unless you're like affecting lighting, and how in Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, they would intentionally like shoot stuff for reenactment and shoot stuff at night that you would never do at night to evoke a mood and get to a truer truth, a deeper truth than what you see. And so just
Were
filming...
there reenactments in Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control?
Yeah,
I
like
don't
for
remember
instance,
that.
when the guys trimming the hedges.
It's more that they were, it was not naturalistic
Staged.
filming.
Right.
It was like, hey, can you do your thing, but at night, and we'll film you.
Right.
Like there were things that were stylized on purpose. And him and Werner, I think, are two of the first people to make documentaries that aren't trying to be, that aren't trying to
Straight
be
up captured.
purists.
Well, that's and Brett Morgan
verite
too,
and all that.
is doing that. Like the kid stays in the picture. He just did that.
But he's really like he does a lot of
Nirvana
art, heavy archival film is kind of his, I don't know, his niche or whatever. But
what, the Nirvana guy?
No, Brett Morgan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Brett Morgan, but he'll also do staged interviews where it's like, we know that this part of the story is going to be a darker time, so we're going to black out the windows or shoot this interview at night, kind of thing.
Yeah,
they should just shoot them all on green screen so they can just put
Exactly.
whatever they want back
But
there.
he-
like you're talking about something sad, and there's like pictures of like Schindler's List back there.
But also like not filming someone just in a hotel room, like taking them, scouting a location.
He builds sets.
And put them in that and film them there to evoke the place that they were at the time.
Yeah.
And so that's where you go like, okay, when is this a propaganda film or not?
I think he's. I like his work. I think he's really like interesting to hear him talk about film. He's very opinionated. He has a lot of. He's thought a lot about it. He has a lot of interesting things to say about it. But I don't always like. And I think what he does is interesting. But like for the interview stuff, for example, he's able to do that because he tends to do the interviews last, and so he knows exactly more or less where they're going to fit in and kind of what he needs to ask people. But I just feel like, when he talks about it, it sounds like, oh, it's going to be awesome. And then in the film, it doesn't really make that big of an impact. And I think it's just one of the few things that he gets to film and control. And so he goes all over the board, I think. And
But he even talks about in the footage, he'll recolor things in archival footage and photographs to evoke a certain mood.
Yeah. And I did see his latest film, Jane, which is about Jane Goodall.
Goodall, yeah.
And It's great. So
But he talks about that in this podcast and talks about how they affected the tone of the footage because it's basically just green and brown. It's not like an exciting set of footage, but they like made things pop more and like brought a hyper realism, like basically brought to life what she writes about in her journals as she sees police or wherever she is. So
He's an interesting filmmaker, and check out his documentaries. And
but Dan
wrap up.
hates documentaries.
As he should.
No, sometimes I just space out. On the most inopportune time, which is when I'm on microphone.
You're recommending
I recommend
the podcast?
Jim and Andy for sure,
Uh-huh.
and then I would say go to that Canon episode of the
Canon.
podcast, and
The Canon's
where they
just
talk
pretty
about
good
fast,
anyway.
cheap, and out of control. If you
Yeah.
want to see someone's philosophy on documentary making and a contemporary / student of Earl Morris, talking about Earl Morris as like a game changer for film.
And I feel like a lot of people have not seen Fast Cheap or heard of Fast Cheap and Out of Control.
I
So
wouldn't
it would be a good. I think if you listen to that, it'll make you interested to go.
Would
check
you
it
think even out of the Errol Morris movies that's like the one you'd put in?
out. No, but
It's a good. I mean, I feel like it's a good intro to Errol Morris.
Yeah.
It's very interesting and it jumps around so much that you're not getting too bored or anything. It's not.
There's a whole lot of stories.
Yeah.
I think even on the because I listened to that episode, and even on the episode he just says it's not his best film, but he thought it was just
Has
super.
enough
It's
appeal,
it's
mass
really
appeal.
interesting, and it kind of opened a lot of doors for documentary film.
Cool.
It kind of redefined documentaries in ways
And-
that his
and
other
non-
films hadn't
and
done.
non-documentary filmmaking too.
Yeah. He proposes that it really
It was
changed
a
the
watershed.
game. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So those are my picks. Next week we're gonna have Dan's pick up on table. What are we gonna watch, Dan?
There's a. It's a 30-minute, that's what it would have been with commercials. But a 30-minute long Christmas special, animated Christmas special called Noel, about a sentient Christmas ornament.
Yep.
All right. And where can people watch Noel?
The whole thing is available on YouTube, and I doubt that there's anywhere else you can find it.
All right. So to find out more about next week's pick, Noel, and all the stuff we talked about in this episode, go to nudioushow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at nudioshow. You can leave reviews and ratings on iTunes, and we're on Google Play and all those kind of devices, listening things, listening portals.
And apps.
And apps. Stuff. So yeah, gang, leave a review if you would be so kind. That would be sweet. Follow us up. Find Dan in the Flophouse for sure. It may not be new.
Maybe it's new to you.
New to you! Explosion sound!
It's all about the music. This pitiful life is 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 all about the music.
Be with him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead.